Hi, everybody. Welcome along to All Net, the Irish Examiner Basketball Podcast. I'm Conor Meaney, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Kieran Shannon. Kieran, you're very welcome.
It's good to be here, Conor. It's actually my birthday today.
Good man.
We're there's social basketball later on. That's how I'll be celebrating my birthday. No, all's good. Excited by the program we have. We'll be joined later by Donal O'Connor, the organizer of the exceptional Castleisland Blitz. I went down under Tony Lean, who's from those parts. As much as I thought I knew basketball, I was oblivious to the phenomenon that is the Castleisland Blitz. Went down there in December the 30th, I think, 1996, and I had my mind blown by just how the fervor down there for the sport. You know, where you have under eights along with Super League. And that was 26 years ago, and it's still going strong. Thankfully, now it's back because we obviously had the 2-year break with COVID. So it's going to be great to have Donal on the program later. And then joining us first now is John Feehan, the Irish Basketball Ireland CEO, and obviously now is 13 months in the job. And it's my colleague Brendan O'Brien would have interviewed him when he got the job, and now it's timely, just a year in, how John's getting in the job. So we're looking forward to talking to John as well.
Yeah, it's a great combination. I guess the helicopter view from John, and then seeing what it's actually like on the ground from Donal. I think one of the great things from myself, I've never been down to the Castleisland Blitz, but it's I guess with social media now over the last couple of years, you start to see pictures of what this thing people have talked about for so many years. It's kind of one of those famous things that has existed. I think of when I was growing up, I would have heard of that. I would have obviously heard a lot of the Demons Neptune kind of derby games, and you never would have seen any of them being up in Dublin. But now, over recent years, you're starting to see a lot more of it, and it helps give context to a lot of the basketball that happens in other parts of the country.
And so you never got down there, no? Because I remember when I went down, obviously Bright Saunders would be well known for the connection with Notre Dame, Denny Notre Dame, and in those years, and I think they would credit a lot of their cup success, where they won 4 consecutive cups in the late 90s, early 90s, to the team bonding of going down to her homeland. Those 3 or 4 days staying in the River Island Hotel, playing those games. And so you had teams from all around the country. It's not too late. They still have social basketball, or for whatever age, Connor. So they might, I think we've talked our way into Donal giving you an invite for next year, okay? Because it's you've experienced nearly everything, but the Blitz is something definitely worth experiencing.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, without any further ado, we'll bring in the Basketball Ireland CEO, John Feehan, my very short-term boss last year. John, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you both very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So,
John,
sorry, go ahead, Kieran.
John, just there. I mean, the first thing that strikes me is I thought I had the most impressive library here, but that's quite a lot of books you have there. What material there? Is that all work related, or is that any light reading there, or
I'm operating from home today, and some of that's what they call light fiction. Some of it's rom-com stuff. I have 2 adult daughters and a wife who keep that going. There are a number of shelves there with sports books in them as well, which I've built up over the years. So yeah, it's a kind of mix and bag, really.
What's good ones there? What's 2 or 3 from the shelves there you'd recommend?
I've got 1 or 2 from various lines in the past and that kind of thing. And generally any kind of political intrigue as well. Also, some of the biographies, that kind of thing as well. So it's a mixed bag, as I said.
It helps you in the job, does it?
I don't know if it helps in the job at all, but it certainly relaxes and it helps me to calm down a little bit sometimes. Yeah. So
very good.
And John, you touched upon obviously the Lions there. So I don't know how much the basketball community know about you, other than obviously a very impressive kind of CV, having worked with the Lions and the Six Nations. So how about you just give people a quick kind of overview of your journey within sport that kind of led you to eventually being in basketball?
Well, my background is I played a lot of rugby over the years. Indeed, I played for Leinster at one stage. That's going back a lot of years ago. But I've been involved in sport through both, obviously, at a personal level, but more particularly at a business level for many years. I've worked in a number of different companies, marketing and other sponsorship areas myself. So I've been involved in sponsorship of everything from horse racing to motorsport to cycling, and indeed many moons ago sponsored Castleisland with Lucasade Sport. So that's going back quite some time ago. Then after that, through a series of different jobs, I ended up as the CEO of the Six Nations and the British and Irish Lions for 16 years. And then within that, for a 5-year period, I was also CEO of the Pro 12 is now the URC. So after that, I did a little bit of sports business consultancy, and I was involved with soccer and one or two other bits and pieces. So I think I have a reasonably full CV as far as sport is concerned, having been both a sponsor and in NGBs or in sports bodies looking for sponsorship and indeed media and all the other aspects of the sport. So yeah.
And John, just that is a formidable CV. Just let's say over the Six Nations, what were like that was a considerable span of time. I mean, it would have just been when it went from 5 to 6 nations or around that time.
I came in just after that. It went to Six Nations in 2000. I joined in 2002, and I left in 2018.
So what were the achievements, or what way did you see the tournament? Obviously, it had a great tradition, history, but where did you see it even grow further over that time?
Well, there's a whole range of different things. Obviously, that coincides in many respects with, if you like, the advancements of the digital age. So there's a whole area of bringing in new media and all the social media platforms and all that kind of area. They were there, but in a minor way previously, and a lot of that was huge development there. In addition, then you would have had things like, I actually brought in the branding they use now. All of that was brought in by myself. But also, in addition, then things like we went from about 70 odd countries where it was broadcast around the world to almost pretty well every country in the world at this stage, 200 plus. I brought, did things like, I was the one who got the women, eventually the Women's Six Nations onto primetime television and made sure that was given a strong focus as well. I mean, there's a whole range of different things. You do an awful lot in 16 years, I can tell you, as well as, if you like, organizing, structuring. Probably the biggest achievement I got in that time was, and it's something that the public will never see, but it is bringing in the constitution that the Six Nations works under. So up to that, it was one constituted committee. What that means basically is that it had no legal standing, and that was all sorted out. So there's a whole heap of different things, if you like, but I've only mentioned a couple really there.
You mentioned there 16 years is a long time to get a lot of things done, but we're at 13 months in basketball. So I guess first thing will be, now that you're there just over a year, how has your perception changed of basketball, or has it changed? Is it kind of what you expected when you came in, or now that you've been around it a little bit more on a day-to-day basis, is it kind of different in different ways, or how have you seen it?
Well, I think probably the thing that comes across very strongly is, the great people involved in the sport, both the volunteers and the staff. They're really good people, and there's a lot of enthusiasm to make things better, and that's really heartwarming from my perspective. It's great to get involved with people who really want to make things better, and from my perspective, that's a really important thing. So I suppose, Connor, you asked me, is it different? I mean, obviously there's elements that I wasn't aware of that you find out as you go. But to be honest, I would say most of what I would have expected is what actually transpired. I mean, most sports operate in a very similar way. So how you motivate a team, how teams bond and come together, discipline, coaching, refereeing. Table officials is a new one for me, I have to admit.
Well, what do you make of that dynamic? How is it different to other sports?
Well, like most sports have referees and officials. They don't have a separate set of officials to look after the officials, if you know what I mean. So, to that extent, it's only slightly different. I mean, ultimately, to be honest, most sports, I would say, 90 to 95% of sport is the same, and it's only what actually happens on the pitch or the court that actually is different. So everything from how you organize a digital program, how you motivate people, how you bring people together, how you get the governance correct, how you communicate what you're doing about the sport, how you market the sport, how you go about the funding and commercial models, how you end up with the coaching structures, how you end up with the profiles you need to give it, the basic strategies. They're all pretty well very similar in any sport. So the thing really is to make sure that we get it right for basketball.
And I guess when we talk about a US president or whatever, it's usually the first 90 days plan and everything else. And when you came in, you probably had a very set vision of what needed to be done in that first kind of year, even within basketball. What would you look back in the first kind of year and just be like, with a satisfaction of kind of, yeah, look, we're on the right track, that we're moving in the right direction from the things that have been implemented?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's empowerment of staff. And empowerment of the people who are involved in the various committees and that kind of thing. Really, at the end of the day, basketball is a big sport in Ireland, and I don't think enough people realise it. And it's up to us together to make that different. And I think we can. I think there's no question but that we can. From my point of view, what have we done over the last while? Well, we've everything from sort of introducing the Swish app for NBN and the data, which is fantastic. You know, we've 85,000 user sessions on that at this stage. It's digitalizing the whole data. And for instance, in the past, it would have been difficult to get a good roundup of scores, even on a Monday morning. Now it actually happens. You can see it live and happening in your hand. And that's what, you know, modern Generation Z and all of the other people involved in basketball expect. We need to be top line, we need to be leading edge, and I think we're getting there. It'll take us a while longer, I'm sure, but we've also introduced the OTT platform. There'll be over 500 games shown on that this year, and that not just the National League, but we're going to do the schools finals, and we'll do a number of other games through the year as well. And you know, that's an area where I think, you know, we're giving ourselves great exposure and the opportunity for people to see the game. We've also looked at a database. A database may sound very boring to a lot of people, but actually it's a great way to communicate with your constituency, with all the people who are out there, not just the committed fans, but also the people who are on the periphery and who may have a peripheral interest in basketball, who you can draw into it and develop relationships with. And that's the kind of thing we're doing at the moment. I'm also looking at the governance. We're looking at the number of committees we've got. How can we restructure it in a way that will actually make it more efficient for everybody to get results and get things done? So there's a whole heap of different things happening at the moment, all concurrently. And you said at the start there, I had a vision in the first 90 days. My first 90 days is really about learning, absorbing, understanding, getting to feel for what basketball is all about, who are the individuals, where do we need to make the changes. You know, change is one of those things. It's an inevitability. Change will always happen. It's how you react to that change is the most important thing. And I think in the past, perhaps basketball has probably, you know, done well and sort of said, we've done well, let's leave it at that. Let's not change too much in the future. I think we need to change that. And as a sport, we need to kind of move on and be actually quite enthusiastic about change and what it can bring for us.
So what are certain changes that you're possibly thinking of that would be particularly significant while you just mentioned? Yeah.
There's a whole heap of things. I mean, I did mention a number of things there, like the committees and so on, but there's also, like, we have to look at our infrastructure. We'll have to look at the National Arena, which was a fantastic arena, and not too many NGBs have their own national arena and their own premises, and we do, and it's fantastic. And the atmosphere in there is second to none. And we've done some great things, like we have now 2 new big digital scoreboards, stroke televisions in the actual arena, which adds to the atmosphere. We've just installed an AI, artificial intelligence camera, which is producing really top quality streaming from the arena. And there's a bunch of other initiatives going on, but ultimately we need to do quite a significant overhaul of the national arena. I want it to be absolute top line, state of the art. So there's obviously a big job to be done there. That probably is a job to be done over a number of years. It's not.
It's 30 years. This it'll be January. Will be the 30th anniversary of the arena opening, and so that is as you said, the wear and tear. And like, are we talking? First of all, are we talking about any different? How are we looking at? Are we looking at greater capacity? Are we looking at? How else are we looking at maybe the arena being?
I mean, in the arena, this is all subject to obviously detailed plans, and things will change a little bit as you go along in this process. But certainly extra capacity, top class hospitality facilities. You're talking about changing rooms, much better changing rooms. You're talking about moving it from two. Obviously it's one court when you have the whole seating out, but when the seating goes back, we have two. I'd like a situation where we have up to 4 courts there. There's a whole heap of different things I want to do there. We want possibly a gym in there, maybe a cafe. There's a load of different things that could be brought in there to.
Who would be using it, John? Who do you see using it more? When you say 4 courts or a gym, cafe, who do you see using it?
I see primarily, obviously, basketball, but I don't see just basketball. I think things like volleyball, etc., could also use it. So it can be used at a multi-layered level, and I'd like it to be used 24/7, 365. I really do, because we have to get the throughput through the arena to make sure that we absolutely can deliver on some of the revenue targets we're looking for in the future and that kind of thing. So it should become a source of revenue for the actual sport, but more particularly give us huge profile for the sport as well as we go forward. But
when you're talking about hospitality,
that would be
what events do you see being there that will be more attractive for that?
Well, even our own basketball games. I mean, for instance, our international games and that kind of thing. We need to have top class sponsorship. But it's also a venue that could be used for corporate use as well, in the way that sort of the Aviva is, or Croke Park is used at corporate level. There's a lot of funds to be generated in that kind of environment. And it also will obviously help the profile. So we'll have better media facilities, we'll have better licensing facilities within the actual structure and so on and so forth. So there's a whole heap of different things. Now, it's in its infancy in terms of developing something like that, but it's certainly within my target. I'd like to see something like that happen.
Are you targeting the government for extra funding for some of the revamp that you'd want?
Well, clearly, no sport can actually develop significant infrastructure without assistance from the government. So obviously, we will be asking for them. But we have a lot of work to do before we even go near government to look for funds. This is not something you can just pull out of a hat. And there it is. It's going to be a significant addition to that requirement. But and the plans will probably be adapted and changed slightly as we go forward. But there are a lot of things to be put in place for that to happen. But you're right. Yeah, ultimately, we would hope that the government would be in a position to assist us in that process.
Very good. And John, just going back to some of the other successes and developments that we talked about. So the streaming in particular is a major change that's happened within the national leagues. It's something that we've gone from a very small minority of games kind of streamed on Facebook by individual clubs to now having every game streamed. One of the criticisms of it from the wider public is that we're probably shrinking our audience, and that the diehards who always watched are the ones who are now getting even more. I'm watching more games than I've ever watched before, and I'm delighted with it. But that the person who may not know the sport as well is seeing less of it because it's behind a paywall. What's your own kind of thoughts on that? And is there a model, do you think, over the coming years where there may be more free-to-air games within that model to kind of try and entice people in as a way to try and grow that audience?
There are a whole heap of thoughts around these things, but I mean, I don't believe the kind of levels we're charging for, say, a whole season. When you get 500 odd games, I think the more important thing, Connor, really more than anything else, is to ensure that the quality of the production and how it can be seen. There's no doubt at all that it is actually, rather than reducing the audience, I think it's increased the audience. I mean, there are 37 different countries that are actually looking at it at the moment around the world, and not just around the world, but more particularly within Ireland. There's over 160,000 sessions have been done on the actual OTT platform, and that's even a figure that's slightly out of date at this stage. So from my point of view, there's no doubt at all that we're getting far better exposure. And I can tell you something, all of our sponsors are much, much happier to see it where it is, because they're getting concentrated attention for themselves, and a really good positive vibe is coming from it.
And then can you see, I suppose, it doesn't have to be an either or too, John, and like as you said, the streaming services there, every weekend people can watch their National League games. Then we had a situation where obviously we had let's say the international teams have been live on television. We'll have the cup finals being televised at the weekend of January 22nd. But are you looking to get even further games? Like, we had Kieran Donaghy on the first pod here, and he said, look, the elephant in the room is getting more national exposure. That's how the crossover often happened when the sport boomed in the mid-80s, getting the live national cups. At a time, it was very premium for even the GA to get on national television live. So tell me, what is your strategy there? What are your ambitions there in terms of getting maybe more live to air?
We definitely would like to see more live to air on a national broadcaster. I mean, I have to say, TG Ceathair have been very good partners, and we're continuing to develop the relationship with them. So, for instance, this year we have seen the first time we were able to televise in TG Ceathair an international from outside of Ireland. That hadn't happened before, and we'll be doing more of that as we go forward. But you're right. I mean, these are discussions we're having with TG Ceathair about the nature of how we can develop our relationship with them over the next little while. And we would hope in time, in the not too distant future, to have a situation where we have certainly more league games perhaps, and other games. I'm not going to get too specific about it now, but basically we definitely would like to see more basketball on live.
John, you came into rugby in those various jobs when it went under revolutionary change. You played yourself for Leinster. It wasn't on a contract. It was pre-95, and within that 10 years, the sport had completely changed. Do you see, and you come with a commercial acumen? We've had it national leagues here for 40 plus years on a home and away basis, semi-pro with the American stroke, maybe Bosman's getting paid. And we pretty much had that model, the club model, for the last 40 plus years. Do you see that being the way it'll continue over the next 10 years? Or do you see it being potentially changed and revolutionized, the way that rugby went from the AIL nearly to the province model at the elite level? And there's a debate within the sport in itself, but in terms of profile and commercial, it brought the sport to a completely different place. Do you see any change in basketball on that as the model we have for the national leagues going forward?
I think in terms of how basketball presents itself in profile and everything else, it's really important that we focus on two key streams. There are three key streams in basketball. You're talking about national league clubs, you're talking about international, and you're talking about schools. And from my point of view, in terms of profile, people can't follow 100 teams. They can, you've got to bring it down to a number that people can actually follow and get familiar with people. People will follow people. They'll follow teams and people. So we've got to highlight very strongly the National League, particularly Super League, but also Division 1, and build the rivalries, build the team profiles, build the profiles around players. We've also got to do the same thing with the international side. because ultimately, I mean, if you really look at some sports in Ireland who get some fairly major profile within Ireland, it's always their international side that actually leads the posse. So we've got to basically make sure that our international sides are given that level of prominence. But also, I don't see that all by itself. It's got to be in association with the National League sides as well. So it's a joint pronged approach. I think, for instance, basketball was very big in the 80s and 90s. It has every bit the same potential to do the same thing now. But we've got to actually make sure that we give people something that they want to watch. And I'm not talking about the dedicated basketball fan. I'm talking about all the other people who may have.
Yeah, like it is true. The international programs for, you take any sport. Look at the Irish women's team and soccer now. You mentioned like how you got women into the Six Nations and the Irish breakthrough, around 2013, 14. But would you? With the international teams, at the moment, like we had no international teams famously for 7 or 8 years. We're now back in the Eurobasket qualifiers, which is a huge step, and you're optimizing, or you're trying to optimize it, and you made strides in that. But let's just say a dilemma that basketball has is if in Ireland it is one of the 2 biggest international sports in the world. You come from a global sport in rugby, but it's not global the way basketball or football is. And it's therefore harder for an Ireland to medal. Does Sport Ireland, will Sport Ireland under your reign, your tenure, recognise basketball as a high performance sport and get necessary? Because at the moment basketball does not get into Abbottstown when plenty of other smaller sports are, because they're considered to be more likely to medal at European level. Yeah. Is that something that you are campaigning for, and can you see you having success over that during your tenure?
The simple answer is yes. Okay, but obviously it's the process. As you said, we were out of international basketball for a number of years, and that didn't help our cause. You're right. We're involved in the second biggest sport in the world after soccer. So we have a profile, an international profile that, as a sport, which is almost second to none, certainly in terms of the number of countries it's played in, its prominence, its importance. But from my point of view, I think it's a process for us to develop with Sport Ireland. Sport Ireland, are tasked with making sure that they get the best return they can for every euro is spent by the government through Sport Ireland. And part of that, and only part of that, is, if you like, the whole area of achievement at elite level. Other aspects would be just people, participation, inclusivity, lots of other areas as well. Now, I am absolutely certain that basketball can, and probably will in the next short while, hopefully, be a participant in that last part, because I think in almost every other respect, we tick the boxes hugely. We take it for diversity, we take it for inclusion, we take it for spread across the country, we take it for spread of the types of people who play it at whatever level in Ireland. So at pretty well every level we're ticking the box. The only level that we probably haven't ticked in the last number of years is this elite level. Now, we have a real opportunity, certainly through things like the 3x3 game. Now, the 3x3 game levels the pitch in many ways with lots of those big international countries, because essentially you don't need as many world-class type players, because simply there are less people on the court. So ultimately, it's one of the sports that I think that we could actually push basketball, or one of the areas we could push basketball in with Sport Ireland to develop an elite program. But you're asking me, I think Basketball Ireland's own view of elite, it will always be about winning some medals, but I think it's also about improving your standing through the international standing. So if you start at, I don't know, say you start at 70 and you end up at 50 over a 5-year period, you've done a hell of a job. moving yourself
Yeah,
up the street.
and that is beginning to happen. You can see the two national teams are beginning to go from the small countries in this. But just to finish on it, like, I mean, we're talking about Sport Ireland and the standard of Irish sport throughout since the inception of the institute has raised. And a key dynamic in that is most governing bodies, all of them who are funded, have essentially a performance director. That was recommended in the last strategic review. There's the sport is currently undergoing one, which you're obviously monitoring, John. But is that something that you can see? Is that a priority for you at all? That we have? I interviewed your predecessor about this a couple of years ago, and he said there seems to be that the sport doesn't have a consensus candidate. There wouldn't be someone with the necessary recognition within the country, and because the previous incumbent in that role was international, and maybe there was mixed success on that front. That's a long time ago now. Can you see a performance director being appointed again under your tenure, and pretty soon under your tenure, or is it not a priority at the moment?
I wouldn't say it's not a priority, but it's not it's one of many things we have to look at. The exact nature of how the elite performance element of basketball is put together doesn't necessarily mean that you have that specific role. It may be split over two roles or something like that. So I'm reviewing at the moment how that's going to be delivered. In the long term, though, if we do, if we really want to be at the top end of elite sport, we're going to have to definitely look at some sort of role like that. As to exactly how the timing that can come in, I'm not entirely sure. There are a lot of priorities in basketball that are more immediate, if you like, and need we can handle. We have individuals within the sport, within basketball now, that actually can do largely perform elements of that role, but it's just a case of moving on from there and perhaps identifying that for a kind of longer term thing. In simple terms, probably not in the very short term, but yes, definitely in the long term.
John, in terms of the international funnel, so the bottom part of that international funnel with our youth teams, obviously one of the big talking points for a long time has been the pay-to-play model for younger people having to pay to be on national teams. We don't have funding for the youth national teams yet, and we haven't, as a community, figured out a way to support those yet. Is that something that is a priority, or how do you see that kind of overall model of the youth national teams and how they feed into that overall, the senior national team?
Yeah, I mean, let's be straight with everybody. We don't have the funding at the moment to turn around and fund all the youth international sides. We do make serious contributions to them, both financial and in terms of the actual staffing and support structures behind them. So to say, we're not really supporting them would not be fair. Having said that, there is a financial burden on some parents. We are very conscious of that. And frankly, we will address that as time goes on, but that can only be really addressed once the funds start coming back into the sport. And that is also obviously one of the key things I'm tasked with, if you like, over the next number of years, is to significantly improve our funding models. And when that happens, I'm sure we'll be able to address many of those issues. But
how do you do that, John? How do you do that?
Well, we've kind of looked at the commercial model, and we've reshaped it to a large extent. There were elements of the commercial model that were just missing in the past, and that's not a fault of anybody. Basketball went through a number of issues that happened in the past, and they are in the past now. So from my perspective, it's like a clean book. I can go out there and rewrite the commercial program, and that's what we've done, and we're in the process of changing that. So we would see additional funding models. The model that we're going to put in place, I think, should deliver some significant additional revenues over the next couple of years. Now, it's not a tap. You can't just turn it on. It doesn't work like that. But I think as a sport, we are a very, very attractive sport for many, many commercial.
How is that, John? I mean,
commercial-
like basketball was one of the first sports, like historically. Obviously, the J didn't embrace sponsorship, etc., commercialism till the early 90s. Basketball was nearly out on its own when it started in the early 80s, and it was a front runner. It was a trailblazer. Obviously, everybody else caught up, and a lot of the major sports got their act together, and you would have been part of that with rugby, obviously. And you just said it, like, because there was a sense there, and there's that famous line in the basketball documentary 10 years ago. Jackie Solon said, sponsors are saying, no, basketball is gone. You're saying now that no, there's an interest in basketball, and it's an attractive sport to the corporate Ireland. How is it? What is its USP? What's your selling point to the corporate sector?
It's never stopped being a really fast, dynamic, exciting sport. That's the first thing. Okay, you can't get away from that one. The second thing is it's reliable. It's indoors in an environment where we live in a pretty wet, windy, cold, dark country. So that's good. But like if you look at demographics, we hit pretty well every demographic going. We have an almost 50-50 gender balance in the sport, which is pretty well most sports can't say anything like that. We are very good on inclusiveness and diversity. We have a great spread of the game throughout the country. And we have the numbers. I mean, we've about 41,000 post-primary school registered players in the schools. We have 32,000 registered players in clubs. We have a big number of primary school kids are playing it. And that all those numbers don't even mention the number of people who play it informally. So it's like soccer. It's so easy to just take a ball and play with the ball. Whereas most sports don't have that. So we tick loads of boxes as far as the commercial or funding elements are concerned, and there's a lot of goodwill out there for us. And it's only when you start scratching the surface you realize there's loads of people who played basketball in the past who have a grow for it, but really have lost touch a little bit with it. And I think there's loads of people we can reconnect with, and I think there's a great commercial story there. We really, and add to that then all the digital stuff we're doing at the moment. Our social media channels are fantastic, and there's a load of stuff happening. So from that point of view, I think it's a very, very attractive proposition for any.
You mentioned the participation numbers of the sport, John, and you mentioned both the schools and the clubs. I'm at the cold face off it. It's taken over my life again the last few years, being back coaching and administrating the sport. And I suppose, and this would have been something raised by several of your predecessors, I suppose, historically the way sport in Ireland has rolled, there was almost a laissez-faire approach to infrastructure, and I suppose the J, and then rugby, soccer. A lot of those clubs, particularly obviously in the J, own their own facilities, right? In basketball, it's kind of the generation rent sport, indoor sport in general, but basketball is obviously the biggest indoor sport. And it can be crippling for clubs, A, to get access to a hall, and B, then the hire of it. Whereas the continental model, there's more, clubs don't have to fork out like that. It's more municipal, and it's nearly a social service provided by government. Can you see that model changing? The government has changed. They've changed seats. There's a lot of talk about a shake-up in the governmental policy over the coming years. Is that something that you can see that will ease the burden for basketball clubs? That constant pressure off the hall hire, which all other the major sports being predominantly outdoor don't have to deal with as much.
The simple answer is it's probably not going to change anytime soon. Let's be brutally honest, and I don't think there's any point in trying to pretend otherwise. That being said, government are investing a lot of money, a lot of gyms around the country, and the proviso when that money is invested in those gyms is that they're available to various sports. So I think there's definitely something that we can hitch our wagon to there. The other thing too is we do need to go around and find out, if there are issues about getting hiring halls and that kind of thing. What are the issues? What's the blocks? Why are people saying no when they could say yes? And I think there's certainly a body of work to be done there in terms of maybe there's some scheme we can put together that would assist potential clubs or new or even existing clubs to assist them to get either more time in existing gyms or actually open up a couple of new gyms. Because certainly in terms of the growth of the sport, and again getting back to what commercial people would love to see, I pretty well any club I've talked to anyway, and maybe it's the same for yourself, I don't know, but pretty well any club I've talked to has said to me, we have 30 or 40 kids on a waiting list. We just don't have the gym time for them. And that's tragic. We really shouldn't be in that situation. But it does show the potential for growth for the sport. So in simple terms, I think there's a lot we can do. We can also talk to other sporting bodies about, particularly the GA. There might be some sort of accommodation we can come to with them about access to some of their facilities. But there's a whole range of different things we can do to try and ameliorate where we are on that. But if you're asking me, are we going to end up in a situation where we own a load of gyms? I don't think that's going to be the case anytime soon.
Okay.
The other thing too, I would add, is that when you own infrastructure, whether you're a GAA club, a rugby club, or a soccer club, and you actually own your premise, it's not like all the hassles go away. You still have to insure the place. You still have to maintain it. You still have to purchase it. In many instances, like there's a lot of investment in there, and so there's a lot of cost involved for any club, no matter what format or structure you end up using. So it's not as simple as there's no simple answer to this.
Yeah, no, it's certainly an interesting one. Look, I'm conscious of time, John, and look, we're hugely grateful of the time that you've given here. I think it's really valuable that. I'm not sure a huge amount of the basketball community, as I said at the beginning, know a huge amount of your vision of where you've been moving towards things and also your background. So I think it's been really valuable for you to come on and have this chat. In terms of the immediate next 12 months, what is the kind of key thing that you'd love to be able to deliver, and how would people be able to, from the outside, kind of look in and see that success is happening within Basketball Ireland and we're making the progress that you want us to be making?
Well, certainly we're going to continue with the development of our digital platforms, and that's not just the OTT, but a whole range of other ones. We're going to really drive our commercial program, which I think will in turn drive funding for the sport. We're going to obviously develop more the potential for our new arena, our redeveloped arena. We're going to look at the whole area of what we've just mentioned there about how do we try and assist clubs to get more time in gyms. We're going to be looking at how we're going to develop. We've just restructured the refereeing, the NRC now, and the is now no longer as such. So we now have the National Basketball Referees Association. We've reduced the number of area associations for referees down from 13 to 6. We are getting a much more proactive, much more proactive work has been done in relation to trying to ensure we've more referees and better quality referees. And there's a load of work going on that. We're looking at the governance areas around the numbers of committees we have, trying to empower, rather than having loads of committees, have a smaller number of committees who really have some power to get things done, and with our assistance and with Basketball Ireland's assistance, because we need to empower these people to get things done at a local and at a national level.
John, just before you go, I just touched on at the outset of the show about how, for all I was steeped in basketball, a wow moment for me was going down to Castleisland for the first time. Just for someone who has been involved in sport but didn't come from basketball and now has been 13 months and you've been around, what are moments that, God, this is a whole other world and it's great? Or what have been moments that, yeah, I'm in the right place, and basketball moments for you over the last year that stand out?
I really enjoy getting out and watching the basketball around the country. Like I was up in Belfast Star last year, not like this year actually. And I really enjoyed it. It's just to see it, and then going down to the semi-finals in Cork. What an occasion that is, for instance, or the finals here in Dublin. I love seeing the schools finals. My God, the kind of enthusiasm and the.
You come from a sport that schools finals are massive, but
absolutely.
Basketball is nearly the nearest thing to it, isn't it?
I think in some ways it's better. I mean, the enthusiasm and the nice thing in rugby, it's very elitist in terms of, I don't mean the schools or anything, I just mean it's only the top teams actually get to do in the final. But no matter what level you're at in basketball, whether it's A, B, C, or D level in school, like we've 16 different finals. It's fantastic, and the girls get every bit as much prominence as the boys, and it's that's what I'm sort of saying. There's real enthusiasm there, and there's real potential there, which is something like basketball is like rugby was 30 years ago, in that it has the same level of potential, in my view, to develop into something really special. Not that it isn't special already. But we need everybody else to realise how special it is, if you like. So I think that's our job in a way over the next little while. And I'm really enthusiastic about this. I think the staff are fantastic. They really know they know what they're doing. I think the volunteers around the country have been fantastic. Every time I've got out there, I was down at the Masters in Galway, for instance. That was to 500 players playing in a competition over the weekend. It was just phenomenal, and the social element then too I think is really important. So
you started playing a bit yourself, John, have you?
With a dodgy knee, I've had my knee replaced in the last couple of months. Right. I other than that, anyway, I'd be far too slow. But I'm very impressed with the athletes as well. My impression before I joined was that everybody has to be 7 foot tall to play basketball, but that's not the case. I mean, some of the best players are the shortest players because they're just so fast and they have a dynamism that you don't see in lots of others. So I think it's a fantastic sport. I'm very enthusiastic about it. For me, you asked me, I think one of the first questions was, why basketball and why am I enthused by it? Because of the potential. It has just got so much potential. And it's just a case of we need to prioritize the right things. We need to have a really solid plan. I'm in the process of hopefully within the next month or two signing off on a new 5-year strategic plan. And we put that in place, we will get some serious
that will be out in February, just a bit after the Cups, will it?
Probably February. In theory, February. It might be another month after, but it's certainly imminent. Because we have to, after what's happened to basketball after the last number of years, after COVID, after everything else, the last 10-year plan, lots of good stuff in it, but actually 10 years in lots of ways is too long. I think 5 years we need to get some, and I want some solid things we can actually deliver on, and I'm pretty sure that when the strategic plan is published, people will be quite happy with. If we achieve what we say we're going to do in the strategic plan, basketball will be in a much better place in 5 years' time, and that's really what I want. And that for me, that's what really drives me every day, to make sure that we do the best for the sport over the next 5 years. And I get such enthusiasm by seeing how people, see it developing and see that it can actually get somewhere, and that. Perhaps in the past there's been a little bit of hopelessness, but that's not the way I see it at all. I see it as something that's very dynamic, has huge potential, and will become very prominent in Ireland over the next couple of years.
Brilliant, John. Well, we all look forward to seeing that strategic plan, but in the immediate term, Merry Christmas to you and the staff of Basketball Ireland, and I'm sure we look forward to an exciting 2023, and I'm sure we'll see you down in Cork at the Cup semi-final weekend.
Absolutely, and look forward to your commentary. I'm sure, Conor, at some stage along the line.
You'll tire that quickly, John.
Thank you both very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Thank you for coming on.
Take care, guys.
Bye, John.
Yeah, Kieran, some really interesting stuff there. Clearly, like John's perspective from so many years in so many different areas gives him a view of the sport that's probably a little bit different than what we've had in the past, and some of the things there are exciting to hear. It's I think that strategic plan in February, March, some concrete kind of KPIs and seeing where the sport could be aiming for in the next 5 years would be very, I'd say people will be very interested to see what's in there.
Yeah, I mean, he seems both pragmatic yet ambitious. He's not doing a complete overhaul. I suppose what I found encouraging is he seems to have identified there's the international, there's the leagues, and then there's the grassroots, and he's looking to make gains in them all. It's what I was particularly too that he sounded like he's getting the bug, for the sport, and because I suppose it's just that from passion. We talk a lot about passion in the sport because it's like any sport, or it's got a great history, it's got great passion, it's got great people. I suppose we want to just go from potential to delivery, and he has a track record. You have to say that, and let's hope that it translates. And as you said, that strategic report, he touched on a few things there that will be in it, and. But look, we might have him back on after that because, but no, there was definitely a lot there, and it was great to have him on the program. Donal O'Connor will be joining us now, just to set the scene for Donal. Donal, Mr. Blitz himself, the Duke. Donal, have you got the mic off? Donal, it's a long time since I've seen you, but it's great to see you here, albeit through glass. Donal, have you got your... Donal, very welcome to the pod, first of all.
Thanks very much, Kieran. Hi, Conor.
Hey, Donal.
It's brilliant to see you, Duke. I was explaining to Conor before, you'll have to get Marion down there. It's no longer the Super League team, Conor. It might be the Masters team soon enough, will it? or an intermediate team. But... I was just explaining, like, for someone like myself and coming from Cork, and I suppose I grew up, we were talking about the Christmas period. We would have been Cork at the height of the boom. There would have been a lot of basketball played. The Cork County Board would have held an international tournament. From about 82 to 86, you'd spend, your Stephen's Day or the 27th, 28th of December going up seeing Jasper McElroy in the hall, going up against Murray Metals and Manchester United, Stroke Giants, and these kind of teams. So I was familiar with the concept of basketball at Christmas time, but then I went to Castleisland. Tony Lean was my sports editor and Examiner. I just started with Tony, and he sent me down to an assignment down to his neck of the woods. And Castleisland had just gone into the national leagues. Liam Brosnan, the team there, the under-19 team, and it just blew my mind. The hall was just frenzied. It was the stereotypical Oblate Hall, Procol Hall, hanging from the rafters, and you had under-8 games alongside Super League. I mentioned the Denny Notre Dame were at their zenith. Jenkins, Darren McGuinness, those boys. Going up against, the Morris Caseys from Tralee, the Vinnie Murphys, or Castleisland. Duke, you've seen it evolve. You're there from the start. Tell me how it started, because you're there from the start. How did it come about?
Yeah, it was a time coming into Christmas, Kieran, when, Christmas is a time when people have a lot of time on their hands, and we had a big population of young kids growing up in Castleisland, and we had basketball going in St. Pat's Secondary School, and the girls' secondary school had a team, and there was fierce enthusiasm around the place. So we decided we'd try to run a tournament during Christmas, and we said Stephen's Day would be the time to have a go. and the day after. So we decided we had 2 competitions, or 4 competitions, sorry. We had a senior girls, senior men. It wasn't men really, to be under 19s roughly. And you had junior boys under 14. And the same with girls. We had, I think it was 6, we had 24 teams, and we went to the Astor Ballroom, to the only indoor place at the time, and we got it started out there, and we played the preliminaries there on St. Stephen's Day, and the problem then, we had to clear the hall because there was a dance that night. So we had to get things cleared out, take down the baskets and all that, and the following day then we'd have the semi-finals, and again, that created a problem with the floor because people that were going out dancing wanted to have it nice and skeety like, so we had to try to stop that. So we got, I don't think the owner liked what we did, but anyway, we kind of watered it down, as we'd say, and we got going from there, and we were there for 5 years. And there was a new community centre built in Castleisland, and in 1976, and we moved there, and it gave us more room, more time, and we could use.
And Donal, it blossomed from, let's say, a local thing, as you said, starting out, but then it became all a Kerry. Like, I mean, I would have been Kieran Donaghy's ghostwriter, and
Yes.
he talked about the nerves and the excitement, and he was sick, and but yet nothing was going to stop him playing in the Blitz, right? This is in Tralee in the early 90s or the mid 90s. And you tell me how did it expand from something local, and it still is local, but to throw Kerry, and just even to describe to an outsider who all is playing at the Blitz.
Which is, Kieran, you're right, it started out local and very local. You know, we had national schools, we had local teams under 12, 14 and 16. And then as time went on, we felt we were progressing in the county leagues in Kerry. So we were able to get in teams from around the county, and they were very willing to play, and we were delighted they did. And we had, we had an audience there as well, because it was new in the town. You always had GAN, rugby, and all that kind of stuff. But like John was saying there, it was an indoor you play it indoor, and it's at the time of the year. But I think the time of the year, Kieran, captured the audience because like people were off, and it gave them a chance to do something.
So when you do something, are you talking about going to it, playing?
Going, yeah. It's an out for them to go to. And then, of course, they had children playing. There was some fellas, there were grandfathers that were playing. As you know, you played yourself. I remember you bringing a team down.
I remember going down to play for Tony's team. I cost him the Division 3. I was brought on. I had 2 turnovers in 2 minutes. I was whipped off again. It's a blitz. It's running clock, Donal, isn't it?
Yes.
How does it even work? Because it's a blitz in every sense of the term. Boom.
Oh, it is an out, like, it is pure cutthroat as regards playing, like. But I remember you coming down here, and again, this was another time that Tony had said to me, Kieran Shannon, there he's involved with Neptune, he plays underage. So
I was involved with Blue Demons at the time.
Blue Demons, sorry. And he said he wants to put in a team. So we said, grand, like we got the team in anyway. And but next thing we find, you had 1 or 2 fellas that I think they were too good for, as you will.
Oh, yeah, that was the brother, actually. He still slags me off. He still slags me off for being Kobe Bryant, taking certain, forcing certain breaks. But that's the whole point. You can go, people of all ages, because, so like, again, you have people who, you mentioned you have grandfathers playing, you'll have, and look, I'd say I'd say I'm not exaggerating to say that some guys will go straight from the bar to the court and vice versa, correct?
Yes,
Through the years, yeah.
That's quite true, Kieran. We were threatening there at one stage we'd have the breathalyzer going, like, you know.
So like it goes to, even now in this day and age, tell us, it starts on Stephen's Day, correct?
Yeah, it'll start in the community centre at 8:30 and we'll play 23 games. Overall, we'll play 111 games in the community centre, and in the small hall, we'll play 64. That's where all the national schools are played. And they'll come up for their finals then to me and Paul on the last.
And Donal, just on that, because it's the concept of it all. Like, I've seen it, and it's hugely impressive. It's so alien to the way that, particularly in Dublin, that basketball is done. Is that like, if you try to convince a national school teacher or anyone else to have their team on Stephen's Day ready to play in basketball, they would look at you as if you like you have multiple heads. Basically, it's just not a thing. And even within the clubs, you sometimes struggle with the kids for a few days that they're around family, they're not around basketball at all. Then they kind of come into you back around New Year's where they want to do a camp before they go back to school. How did you get to that point where people saw this as, yeah, this makes sense to us, or this is the right thing to be doing?
Again, Connor, it was local and people bought into the idea, and they could see it was good for them. We got the teachers in the schools were enthusiastic. They were very interested in the club as well, and all the teachers, and then they get coaches from St. Mary's coaching them, and it built on that. And then, like Kieran says there, you went then into Division 3, 4, 5 men. No, this is really a mix between GAA, rugby, and whatever you like yourself. But like Kieran has sampled this, then you go from there, like for the girls, like you'd have senior women, you'd have top class. And then you had the National League, the Super League teams. Tony rang me one time and he said, look, I can get Neptune. Now, Neptune was like getting Manchester United to come here. They were, and again, Kieran said it there about Terry Strickland. You had Tom O'Sullivan, 3-Point Tom. Do you know, you had all these guys who come into town to play in. You had Blue Demons, Neptunes, you had Delta Notre Dame, you had all the top players. And again, they came in onto the court, walked in. And there you had young guys, national school. These fellas, like, they'd only be dreaming about seeing this, and fellas dunking the ball. All that kind of thing. I know in Cork, which was the home of that, and Dublin, but we always thought, because even though we have fierce rivalry with Cork in football, we always see it was a place that was the basketball. And then, like, again, go down to Neptune, time at the Cup or league games, we used to drive up, some of us, to see league games, Blue Demon, Neptune and all that in Cork. And the enthusiasm up there was fantastic. And I think we have generated something like that here. But again, it isn't all like you were saying there about there's some people that won't put in teams because they want to have their time off for Christmas. But then there's the others that will do it and are only mad to do it. And again, I always say to people, Kieran sees himself. Tony knows about it. It's like Santi, seeing is believing. You must see it to see what goes on there. It's an experience, Kieran, you'll agree with this, that the whole setup, like, and the way it goes. And what makes it so special, I think, as well, is the running clock, 10 minutes aside, games are allocated 20 minutes playing time, and which is tight, as you know, Kieran, maybe minute time out and that type of thing. But you're trying to get your games, you know, but the whole thing runs quite well. And we're lucky we have such a good setup with the people we have involved in the club, and we have great sponsors as well, like, you know.
Because it is a hotbed too. I mean, St. Mary's Castleisland, you know, has had extensively National League teams in both genders over the last 25, 30 years. Like it's just on that dynamic, like on getting teams down. How much? Like I know it helped, as I said, historically that Notre Dame team, but it's at a stage where of the season maybe that teams won't come down. Or was it a hard sell, or what was the upside for teams when they did come down?
Well, I think Kieran, that they were off. They had a free weekend and that, or you know that. And again, people like Tony, just getting it across to them, like this would be a good. But I think mostly it's if they're free, they will come, because we have quite a good prize fund, you know, for the winners, runners up, and all the teams that, all those Super Leagues that take part. They're looked after, and they get so much of the fun, like, you know.
It certainly, from the outside looking in, Tralee have been involved in for the last couple of years, and so Super League teams tend to have a choice of whether they play the day before New Year's or not, or else they can try and push that game back. And some clubs like ours always try and push it back, because when you have guys who've come up to Dublin for college and different things, they tend to go back down the country, and we don't have everyone around, so we try and push it out a little bit. But for people like Tralee, when they're playing on the 30th, the fact that they can play in the Blitz and then it's better than any training session after Christmas that you're going to get. It's a proper competitive environment with crowd and everything else. It always kind of gives them that little bit of momentum into that game and then into the Cup semi-final weekend. So you definitely, I think Thunder, Donal, used to go down for a couple of years there as well when they were kind of at the height of what they were doing. So for teams that had a lot of pros who stayed at Christmas time, it gave them something really solid to be part of.
Yes, that's quite true. But again, like, just the freedom of fixtures, that seems to be a problem for us. Now, we couldn't have Garvey's this year because Warriors, they are fixed to play Blue Demons in Cork on the 30th, and there's no doubt Garvey's are a mighty draw to us. We have Castleisland, who are very competitive, and it's great having two local teams, like, you know. But the thing is that Kieran Donaghy is such a big draw around our area, and a lot of our members here will go to support Tralee in the National League. And you see, it is quite convenient from Castleisland. It's only 10 miles on a good road, like, and they get in and see the games there, like. But I think overall, it is the local community, the people have a great affinity with it. And, like, again, there's no doubt there's children playing this year that their father there's fathers playing, there's mothers playing, and there's grandfathers playing. Now, tis you'd say, how can that happen? But it does, like, and you see, again, I'll repeat myself, seeing is believing. If you see what happens.
I know you're going to have to get down there, that's what he said. You're going to have to see what happens.
I'm trying to remember, but I'm pretty sure it must have been 5. It was around the year we won the league. We were certainly invited down, and we were looking at it and whether or not we could do it. And it's this exact problem that we have, is that we knew that for the couple of days that we would go down with half a team, and we're kind of like, it's not fair to anyone to kind of do that sort of thing. And if you're going to do it right. And it is why we ended up not doing it. But I'd certainly love to go down and see it and be part of it. Especially the idea that you can have a few pints and play. This is great.
Yeah. I remember that.
I remember when Neptune were coming down, Ballina, the same, like Lee McHale and those guys. The social side of it as well, and what the coaches were dreading always, like, was playing in it. They get to the final and there's a fierce night out then in the hotel, and they might not be in good shape to play the cup in a week's time or 10 days' time, you know, but they have got that sharpness in the Blitz. You know, those games, they're guaranteed to, you know, in the final, like, you know, it keeps them ticking over as well, like, you know.
Absolutely, and especially because with 20 minutes running clock, you're not going to get blowouts. You don't get that, so you get a couple of close games no matter what. And
Yes,
a close game in front of a crowd is the best tune-up you could possibly get. So it's unique in that sense.
Yes.
So Donal, the very best with it. It's brilliant to see you and that you're still doing it. And you know, like we have had I suppose historically as a sport, you know, a great tournament culture. It's not maybe as pervasive as it used to be, but Castleisland is as strong as there is in the country, and all the more unique for the time of year that you do it and the range you have. It's the great equalizer where you can go from the Super League American to that 10-year-old to that grandfather playing in the Division 5 final. It's all basketball. And they're beside each other, and they both get as much energy from each other. Even the Americans are charmed by seeing the kids, or even the 50-something playing. So listen, Donal, all more power to you, what you're doing down there. I'm sure it'll be another great Blitz. All the more because of, you know, the way the last couple have been lost, you know, with COVID. I mean, tell me, what was it like not having basketball in the last couple of Christmases?
It was very strange, Kieran, you know, that we'd be getting into mode around August, you know, laying up IDs, setting up, but it was fierce strange, like, and we left it as late as we could last year, because we thought we might get away with it, and the COVID was rampant again in our area here, so we decided we had to call it for safety's sake, like, you know. And it was a big miss. There's not the people at home, but this year you can see there's an enthusiasm again by people. Like, now, we're a small bit ropey, the committee and the officers, because we're, you know, year on year, like, you have the run completely, but you have to start pulling out things now again to look at what that, you know, like, is just...
Donal, is John Murphy still doing his
part?
So like, I remember before he became one of the most famous Kerry supporters, there is dressed outrageously. There's a lot of different hats, which I think is one of the appeals too. And of Kerry sports, like the connection between basketball and football, and, you know, I'd say you've seen a lot of the Kerry boys through the years play at the Blitz. Have you seen former Kerry players play? Who's all played?
Well, one of the biggest rogues was Charlie. Charlie used to play in the Division 4.
Charlie Nelligan, yeah.
You can imagine him under the board now. He wasn't great at basketball, like, but he'd clear out everything under the board, like, and not alone that, he could push one of his own players into something that would be coming in. You know, we had, what's his name? No, again, Kieran, you have put me in a spot there. You had Barry John, of course, played with it, Tommy Welsh.
Yeah, actually, like there is a lot of them. The Sherwoods, Jack Sherwood. Just to go back, would you have? But it starts at what time? I remember Gerald talking about being up at some outrageous hour in Stephen's Day. Like, tell me when is it starting? When does it kick off?
26 it starts, but you'll have the people in the halls there. They'll be there an hour and a half. They could be there at 6:30. Gerald used to be down there at 6 o'clock. You know, he was very keen on having everything organised and looking after it, and, you know, but that's the thing there. We have people that are mad for action, but it's starting on the 26th, a day at 30, and in St. John's it starts at 10 o'clock. And
it will go through to the National League final be on the 30th? Is that still the way?
Yeah. That's always the build up to that, that's the final, the big night. And then before that, you'd have the final of the senior national schoolboys. So you'd have a big, and the place would be rocking. Like you said yourself in your book, night and you'd see you in Killarney hanging from the rafters. Like, that's the way it would be on those nights, like,
Yeah. Well,
Brilliant.
look, Donal, brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us on the pod. And for the Blitz, we wish you all the best with it. No doubt it'll be as successful as any of them. And thanks very much for joining. Have a happy Christmas before you're going to be full on, Donal. And thank you for joining us on the pod. Okay?
Thanks, Donal.
Thanks, Kieran. Thanks, Connor. And happy Christmas to you and all the best for the new year.
Thank you, Donal.
You too.
Yeah, it's again, kind of said it there. Like, what even struck you there by hearing what's maybe unique about it?
It's I think it's just the community element of it is just the brilliant part of it. It's the fact that it's everything mashed into one, and it's so alien to. Particularly in Dublin, we're just so disparate that we have lots of people playing in lots of different levels, but it's no way connected in that. We don't have a central, like Dublin doesn't have a central hub of basketball. It's
the way that Cork would have the Procol Hall, right?
Yeah,
and exactly. I don't know even that's what I was touching on when we were talking about John, about what could be going across the four courts, because like, we grew up, all right, let's say I came from Douglas, we'd have home games on a Saturday night, but the whole community would be there. And you got to know everyone within the sport, essentially. In Dublin, it tends to be more silos, is it?
Yeah, you wouldn't see. You don't even see a lot within clubs. Like some clubs have, like we play across 3 different places. Leicester, I'd say, probably have 5 or 6 different gyms. So even within your own club, you could go the whole season without seeing people from your own club. And then it's very rare that you can get it a little bit up in the arena where you might have 2 games going on either court and you're waiting and you're seeing stuff, but very rarely do you actually, like, one of the beauties of something like Castleisland is I've no doubt that while you're waiting, you might be playing in an hour's time, but you're sitting on the sideline as games are happening and you're chatting away to people you don't see all the time. And that absolutely doesn't exist within Dublin basketball. We don't have this sort of community.
Yeah. Well, it is unique. It's not just in Dublin, and it's, I suppose, like, again, going back, we've had a tournament culture in the sport. The cup has been brilliant for the sport, but I suppose the more prominent it got, we got less tournaments. And as you said a few weeks ago about how the better transport or the better motorways has made, staying over less. And it's off a different era possibly, but I think there's just, it's something that the sport should look to a little bit more at all levels, that kind of invitational tournament and inviting people from all over. And Castleisland is a unique hub, and they have where they bring teams from the outside all around the county, and then they have it, so many teams from the local area itself. No, it's unique, and it's to be celebrated and marked, and more power to them. I suppose that's our last pod for 2022. Am I right in saying, Connor? You're not.
I'm not even fully sure.
Yeah, I suppose we'll be looking forward to the cup. In a fortnight's time. We'll be delving into that. John mentioned how it's one of the great basketball weekends. It's sort of a bit like that, where the community comes together on a national basis. But till then, everybody, we wish you all a happy Christmas, and we'll see you in the new year.
See you later. Thanks a lot.